Howdy, y'all. Today is the 83rd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Let's get to it. As a huge history enthusiast and U.S. military enthusiast, Pearl Harbor is absolutely huge, but it's very interesting that there's a lot of stats that I believe aren't well known about the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I want to kind of go into that. I'm going to go into the map from my book, The Encyclopedia of Warfare. It has some amazing maps and timelines, so I'm going to have that up for y'all, and I'll be highlighting some things. And also the casualties, just different stuff that I don't believe is talked about as much as it should be. So first and foremost on the map, it's showing the different routes that the different submarine groups and carriers took to get to Pearl Harbor from Japan. Now, on the bottom, we can see that the third submarine group was headed more southeastward. The special attack formation was headed more dead east, if you want to put it that way. But then you have the first submarine group was more northeast. And then you have the carrier striking force with 3 submarine screening groups all heading a little bit northeast and then dead east, and all of them converging on Hawaii. So it's very interesting that they all took different routes and that this was not just a direct line or one huge carrier group, attack group formation of any sort. It was huge formations for sure, but they were all going separate routes so that they weren't all in one group. And there was submarine screening groups to prevent being identified for the carrier force, all that good stuff. And we don't really hear too much about that, all the planning that went into it. So there were a lot of Japanese military commanders that believed one big hit would just cripple the U.S. naval fleet in the Pacific theater, and there would be no way they'd be able to recover from that. Unbeknownst to them, the U.S. carrier groups were not at Pearl Harbor, and that was what they deemed the biggest setback or flaw in the planning, was of making sure that the U.S. carrier fleet was there, because the U.S. carrier Enterprise, in the company of heavy cruisers Chester, Northampton, and Salt Lake City, and destroyers Balch, Gridley, Craven, McCall, Maury, Dunley, Finning, Benham, and Elliott went to Wake. Then you have the U.S. carrier Lexington with heavy cruisers Astoria, Chicago, and Portland, and the destroyers Porter, Flusser, Drayton, Lamson, and the Mahan sailed from Pearl Harbor with aircraft from Midway. Then you have the heavy cruiser Indianapolis and the old destroyer minesweepers Dorsey, Elliott, Hopkins, Long, and Johnson sailed from Pearl Harbor for an amphibious exercise at Johnson Island. And then also for December 7th, before the attack, heavy cruiser Minneapolis, destroyer minesweepers Boggs, Chandler, Harvey, and the Lamberton were involved in gunnery exercises south of Oahu. So all of this was detrimental to keeping the U.S. carrier fleet safe, unbeknownst to either side. They didn't know that the attack was coming from the American standpoint, but also the Japanese did not know that a lot of these ships and carriers, along with a lot of the aircraft, were not, in fact, at Pearl Harbor. Now, the first wave at 7:38, first wave of 138 aircraft, mainly torpedo and dive bombers, left the carriers and attacked the American fleet. Subsequently, the 171 aircraft of the second wave attacked, concentrating on the airfields. Simultaneously, 5 Japanese submarines each launched a single midget submarine, but these operations achieved very little. Now, there was, in fact, one Japanese sub that was destroyed before the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was identified by a destroyer and was sunk, but was not a confirmed kill up until the early 2000s. So going into a little bit more depth, the sour note, again, for the day's triumph and from the Japanese perspective, was that the critical American aircraft carriers had not been in Pearl Harbor. The failure to destroy America's naval air capability would come to haunt the subsequent Japanese war effort. Although the attack and the scale of losses suffered a massive psychological effect on the USA, this steeled the American nation to avenge the setback rather than undermining the American will and determination. So, getting into the statistics of casualties. I do want to go over that because it is quite staggering. You just get the So the Japanese attacks sank 4 battleships and 2 destroyers and severely damaged 3 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 4 other vessels. The attacks also wrecked 188 aircraft and damaged a further 153 aircraft, which caused significant personal casualties amounting to 2,402 killed and 1,282 wounded. The Japanese suffered only light casualties, including 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines lost, together with 66 personnel casualties. So, a lot of this is from the Encyclopedia of Warfare. I do like quoting this book because it is absolutely amazing. I really enjoy being able to look up different battles, and if it doesn't have a map on it, that I can go and read about the battle in a very quick summary, but also being able to look at a lot of major battles from very, very early on in warfare to very recent warfare. And being able to just look at it, read the highlights, and if I want to dive into it deeper, it has the dates for me, it has who was there, what happened, in a very brief synopsis, and I really enjoy that. So December 7th is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, 83 years ago, and just absolutely amazing details that aren't talked about. Yes, we all know what happened, but just the fact that the Japanese fleets were all in different formations coming across. If someone asked me the other day before I was looking this up, did they come all at once? Did they sit and hold? Did they all go from this spot to that spot? I wouldn't know any of that. So I really like that it highlights stuff like that. I like the more lesser known facts, the lesser known statistics that I think are very important but aren't very much talked about. So I do really like referencing this book as well as many others, but this one has very important details in a short amount of pages in comparison to what I think it would have taken to write all this. So the Encyclopedia of Warfare, I really like quoting from it. I like reading from it, as some of the stuff I mentioned, the statistics of casualties and also the events that happen. So anywho's, hope you all enjoyed, and there'll be more content coming up soon, and I'll see y'all in those vlogs.